When you listen to a song, what does it mean to you? How do you interpret what it's saying to you? Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another video. It's been a hot sec since I've done like a talking video like this, but I figured we'll just do another video of me just here with a mic since, it's been a long time. But I have, some notes here, so that's why I'll keep looking down, but it's okay. It's not very official anymore. No big YouTuber vibes because we've given that life up. Today's topic is how do we interpret music? Now, as a quick disclaimer, these are just some of my random thoughts. They're perhaps a little bit structured. There's no real thought or real research put into it. There's some thought, but no real research that's put into it. Or like I'm not talking to other people, although there is a studio audience of one. There it is. And also, as a second part of this disclaimer, there is a tiny bit of a promo at the end of this video, but you don't have to stick around for that because we're a small YouTube channel. So, starting with question number 1. How do you listen to a song with words? And how do you interpret its meaning? Now, maybe when you listen to a song with words, you get some of the meaning from the title. And you definitely get a lot of meaning from the lyrics, but the atmosphere of the music, I think in a lot of senses, can change the way that you interpret the lyrics, right? A song can be very poetic, right? It can be poetic, and poetry in and of itself has a depth of meaning to it and a depth of understanding that you can draw from it. That's why people analyze poems. They're very, very old, and it says a lot to them or means a lot or explains a lot of the human experience. Now you add an element of music, atmosphere, mood on top of that, and suddenly interpretation gets a little bit more difficult, a little bit more interesting. But then it gets even more complicated on some level when it gets to just instrumental music. I'm just gonna hold the mic now. I'm annoyed by the mic stand because I feel like, But now I feel like a stand-up comedian, so this is even better. You just have the title and the mood of the music. You don't even have lyrics or words to guide your thoughts anymore. And then we get into the question of what is the composer's intent? What does the composer or songwriter want to say through the song? Or what does the composer or songwriter want you to feel through the song? Like, what are you supposed to get from the piece of art that you're consuming? And then to throw on another layer of complexity, especially with something like classical music, what's the performer's intent? What does the performer want you to experience? How are they interpreting the composer's intent? And then now you're interpreting the performer's intent on top of that. And then maybe secondly, even coming to the second question, maybe even more importantly, does knowing the creator's intent change the way that you hear the music? And I think for some people the answer is no, not really. Some people will just say, I'll just enjoy whatever art, whatever music. Again, this discussion isn't limited to the scope of just music, but it can be interpreted for art as a whole. But I'll just enjoy whatever the way that I see it, the way that I want to, right? Whatever it says to me. But I think for me, the answer is not just yes, but it's a yes and a no. I think I'm happy to interpret something as I receive it, right, without knowing a lot of the background information. And that doesn't necessarily change entirely once I know the creator's intent. But the creator's intent deepens and enhances my view of my interpretation of what I just experienced, if that makes sense. I want to let the creator's intent speak to me, challenge me, and maybe even change some of the way that I experience their art. But at the end of the day, I still have to make an interpretation. I still have to like it or engage with it or, be provoked by it on my own. And this way, I think it's almost conversational. It's almost conversational in some sense. It's a way for me to understand the person, the being behind the music, behind the art. Now, here's another question, right? I think that this leads to, again, very disjunct thoughts. Maybe more questions than thoughts, more questions than answers. But is the communication then effective? I think that's a way that we can evaluate art as a whole, right? And maybe one of the better ways of evaluating art, not so much like did you just see it and enjoy it, or maybe just even the intent behind it, but is the intent effectively communicated? Is it effectively communicated and did you like it as a result? I think that's, how I like to look at art and anime and stuff like that too. I'm not trying to put barriers on enjoying art. It's totally your prerogative to enjoy art however you want to. Just take it at face value or look at the creator's intent. But I want to understand, right? I think as a creator and as a consumer of art and music, I want to understand people, and I think that's what makes art and music beautiful, right? It's a language of sorts. And coming specifically to me as a creator, I want my music to be enjoyed, right? 100%. I think that's one of the reasons why I share music. I think I also want to be understood. It's like a very basic human aspect, right? You want to be known and understood by people. And so I think that goes for my art and creativity as well. I want to be understood and seen for what I'm trying to do. I want my feelings and thoughts to reach you, my audience, right? But also, I want you to engage with it in a way that's not just restricted to what I want you to know. Like, otherwise, it would be a very long lecture of me just telling you what I feel, right? Instead of guiding, and I think guiding is a very important term, right? Guiding you along some sort of journey to experiencing something that I've experienced that now I'm interpreting for you. Then I think that naturally leads to a question. Again, many questions but no answers. No real answers. How much does an artist need to reveal about their art for you, the consumer, to know what they're talking about? Obviously, I think this varies depending on intent. Some art is meant to be like purely just engaging, right? You're supposed to create a lot of your own interpretations. Other things that are more personal to the artist perhaps are desiring to be interpreted a little bit more specifically. And so I think I have a bit of an analogy here, right? I think art and music is kind of like looking at a landscape through a blurry window. The art itself is a window to the blurry landscape of like whatever emotional field out there. You want to call that the like creator's like life, emotions, or like whatever, or some like aspect of like human living or human life. And the window gives you a snapshot of that whole thing. But it's a bit blurry. And so what the artist reveals, I think, is the focusing of that window, the sharpening of that lens, so you're able to make out certain specific things in that landscape. You're able to put to words, kind of, what you're actually seeing. Otherwise, it's just completely nebulous, right, and unknown to you, and perhaps too abstract to make sense of. I think this is like very interesting, right, because it's like, I play a lot of classical music, right? I grew up playing a lot of classical music, and a million and one students have been told to paint a picture, draw a story in their heads or whatever when they're playing through to try to help with the emotionality, but not a single person knows what that story is, aside from maybe the teacher. And so maybe that story is deeply meaningful to the person who's performing, to the student who's performing, but nobody would ever know. Nobody would ever know unless that student actually came out and explained it to like somebody or a group of people. You can't pick that up from just listening. But does that necessarily change the way you engage with it? I don't know. I think it does for me, right? Which is why we're having this discussion, and why all my music, why all my music on YouTube features such long descriptions. So I have two examples that I want to go through. They're mine, and they're basically two pitches for you to go and listen to them, because I want to promote my own music after all, because this is a small channel. First, an album I released in January. This is an album called Grace to Trust. I did not necessarily promote it here on YouTube because it is not just piano, it's not just WattKeys. It was a personal project, but it is an album of hymns that is both piano and vocals. By nature of it being hymns, you may have various interpretations. If you grew up in a church, perhaps, that sang hymns, you may feel a sense of nostalgia. If you're an atheist, perhaps, then you might think that it's just a series of nice tunes, or maybe you'd be even a little bit dismissive of religiosity as a whole. If you're like an American evangelical Christian, you might find it a pleasantly enjoying album, and you might find it pleasantly meaningful as well for you. But what if I told you that it was a reflection of my life over the last few years? What if each hymn was chosen specifically to represent something, part of the narrative, and that even the hymn writer's story and their life journey was taken into account in the selection of the hymn? What if I didn't choose the hymn necessarily just for the lyrics or just for the way that it sounded, but also for some sort of meaning that I find personally behind it? Now, the perspective might shift. It might get more interesting for you. It might be more engaging. But if you really don't know me at all, there's like no way to guess at that meaning unless I tell you explicitly. And if you do know me personally, it still might be hard to guess specifically what each hymn actually means. So that's the first example. Now the second, this album that I'm promoting here, WattKeys. It's all instrumental because this is, the WattKeys way. I just play piano. Yes. What is the album name? I almost forgot my album name. The latest album that's coming out soon on Spotify and on YouTube, or like whatever, one song at a time on YouTube, is called A Lantern Right Journey. So how much do you need to know this time to actually understand the album? It's based on Genshin Impact, right? So if you don't play Genshin Impact, it might just be pleasant OSTs, right? Another set of pleasant anime OSTs that you listen to, maybe like the Final Fantasy ones or like whatever. Maybe you'll find it interesting that there's a little bit of a Chinese touch to the songs. But if you play Genshin Impact, It might remind you of very specific locations, specific moments in the game, and specific events that happened at specific places. And if you really enjoy Liyue as a region, then it might mean even more to you. It might mean a little bit more. Overall, right, the message of this album isn't as profound or as deep as, my last one. It's just merely taking you through a journey of Liyue. But can I do that for you even if you haven't played the games before? Even if you don't know what any of the landscapes I'm referring to look like? Even if you haven't experienced any of the events? Can I describe just a little bit of what you're seeing, what you're hearing through the music, using words, for you to enjoy and understand what I'm trying to say? I think that's the big question, and that's the challenge. So maybe this is where we'll get the answer to all the questions I asked earlier. So here's the plan of the structure. It is 17 tracks, split across 3 movements and parts. The first one is called Between the Stone Gates. That's our entrance into Liyue. The second is called The Heart of Liyue, which is our journey to Liyue Harbor. And the third is The Romance of Liyue, which is all the nice feelings and the sentiments, and also I feel like the real magic of the region as a whole, to me. Of course, another reason why I chose this region is because I'm Chinese, and I enjoy Chinese-sounding things. So that's an element that I can't really put into words, because there's a part of historicity to that, and nostalgia for me. But hopefully that also resonates through the album. Yeah, I originally intended for this to be a Chinese New Year sort of thing, but since I'm really slow at arranging, all these are my personal arrangements. So even if I played it on the channel before, that wasn't my arrangement. I've done it again as mine. But I intended for this to be a Chinese New Year thing, but recording and practicing and editing is a slow process for me, evidently, which is why I don't make many videos anymore. That transitions us smoothly onto a few comments about YouTube. I haven't answered any of my questions, but hopefully it's given you food for thought. But onto a few comments about YouTube. Overall, the last few videos were highly discouraging, because I don't get views anymore. But I do really appreciate the support from my community, from all you guys on the last community post. That was pretty cool, because I remember a lot of your comments from a few years back, starting from a few years back, and it's pretty nice to see that you've stuck with this channel over the past 2.5 years, 3 years. Has it been 3 years? I'm not sure, but even through all the me not posting and doing stuff, I really appreciate you guys being here. Again, it means a lot that the people who were there then are still here now, because I think my sub count is extremely inflated from Rush E and Unravel, rightly so. So I think my new strategy moving forward for YouTube and my new thoughts is that I want to treat YouTube kind of like how I did back then. I'm making content for people who are committed and not content to grow. So yeah, it's nice to get views and nice to get income from views, but I think it's a lot more special now that I've thought about it, right? To get 10, 50, or even a few hundred people I don't know to care about the things that I make. If you can imagine giving a 10 to 20 minute lecture once or twice a month to 500 people even. That's enough to fill a lecture hall at a big university, which is kind of cool, you know? And I know YouTube videos can get millions and millions of views, but if 500 people sat down to listen to what I had to say about a topic, I think that would blow my mind. And that's kind of what's happening. So I think I should appreciate that more. And so I think my last comments regarding this is that if you're a committed viewer to this channel, you want to see everything that I put out, then please turn on notifications. And if you're not, and you're just stopping by, you made it to the end of this video, and you're I don't know about this, he doesn't post Rushy things anymore, or Animen's things, or Unravel things, you can feel free to unsubscribe. You can feel free to unsubscribe, and don't ring your no bell notifications, because when that notification shows up and you don't watch my video, it hurts me in the algorithm. So don't do that. Please turn it off. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you leave, no hard feelings. I hope you are all extremely excited for this project. I feel like I'm just talking and rambling now, but I guess that's the beauty of doing YouTube like this, and not caring that much about views anymore. Put a lot of effort into arranging. This has been a year-long project. Arranging, recording, and I think even post-production is taking a long time and a lot of effort, because I want to convey a lot of things, right? I want to do this album right. And also, not practicing on a grand piano has really tanked a lot of my playing ability. Yeah, that's also fun, trying to get that back up. Yeah, this will all be on Spotify at the end of the project, so it's going to come out one video at a time over the next few weeks, hopefully starting next week. But I also have to thank, really thank everyone who's supported on Ko-fi, I don't know how to pronounce it, and Patreon, because even if you support it for a tiny bit, even if it was a few dollars here and there, all that money meant that I had to spend less of my own on paying, commissioning artwork and like all that stuff, and like putting time into like recording and stuff like that and getting equipment. So I really, really appreciate it. Big shout outs to Silver Pixia for the artwork, because she's amazing and she did a great job, and I really, really like it. It really inspired me to finish the album actually a lot. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. I can't necessarily guarantee consistent uploads or consistent content, but I hope that you'll watch and enjoy the things that I put out when I do. Yeah, hopefully it's interesting, helpful, and maybe even a little bit inspiring to you. And so until next time, everybody, peace.